My name is Alex and my students will call me Mrs. Parker, and today I'm going to talk to you about who I am as an educator, how I stay critically informed with appropriate representations of First Australians, and how I aim to have relationships with my First Australian students and their families. As an educator, I am caring, informed, inclusive and passionate, sometimes to a detriment. I hope to be the teacher I want for my children and my friends' children, someone that will get to know them and how they learn, someone who will care about their backgrounds and want them to thrive as humans. In Logan, I teach on Yugambeh, Yuggera, Turrbal and Gudjigan country. It is important to understand the relationship elders have with the land and help students understand and appreciate this connection and respect. I aim to do this with books, much like what I have in my reading corner, such as Somebody's Land and Ceremony, written by AFL player Adam Goodes, and Welcome to Country, written by Auntie Joy Murphy and illustrated by Lisa Kennedy. These books, written by Australian authors, help to show the relationship with culture and identity First Australians can have and help my students to respect it. Somebody's Land gives the students the First Australians' perspective of colonisation using their language. Ceremony explains why ceremonies are so important to First Australians and relates to their relationships to the land. And Welcome to Country explains the importance of acknowledging country regularly and again brings attention to the importance of country to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. There are also many more stories written by First Australian authors which can be used in multiple learning areas. My reading corner is a good example of what I would like to have in my own classroom. A place for students to find themselves through a rich range of literature with diverse characters, stories, and settings. Communication is a key factor in how a person learns, and communicating through books showing diversity can help my students understand the importance of a strengths-based approach and why I want to see them as a whole student with their own power and not feel as though they are in a deficit, but that their culture is celebrated in my classroom. Embracing students' culture can be difficult when they don't know their culture or feel comfortable being themselves outside of their home. I believe it is important to help students to feel comfortable with who they are and embrace their culture through this understanding. I hope to do this through avoiding tokenistic misrepresentations of cultures and instead celebrate my classroom's diversity and knowledge through my curriculum to help them learn more about each other, creating more accepting humans, addressing the cross-curriculum priority of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures. Using resources available, such as Deadly Ed and Australians Together, I can teach lessons with appropriate information and tools without taking a tokenistic approach to teaching. It has been shown that students feeling connected with who they are and accepted will perform better at school and be open to new experiences and knowledge. I hope all my students feel accepted for who they are so I can help them to learn more about each other, their diverse backgrounds, and how they can thrive as humans. As a pre-service teacher and teacher aide, I have had many opportunities to learn about concerns with representation and general treatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in public schooling. Coupled with my Catholic high school education, I am better informed on how to celebrate First Australians through representation and avoid tokenistic representations and celebrations. This includes doing more than just celebrating NAIDOC and Culture Fest weeks, and instead bringing the diversity into my curriculum and helping use that to encourage acceptance and build the knowledge of my students. Outside of education, I've been very lucky to meet a diverse range of humans, some very in touch with their culture and heritage, and some not at all, respecting that the stolen generation is still finding their way back to their roots, and for some, it is still too painful, is a big part of listening and not speaking for them. I need to acknowledge the privilege that comes from being a white cisgender woman in Australia and using that privilege to listen to First Australians people when they speak and not speaking for or over them when it is not my place, but advocating for the judgments in my class when they need it. I can ensure I am listening through regular engagement with local elders or appropriate community members and using their guidance to appropriately represent First Nations people in my classroom without falling subject to tokenism or misrepresentation, which could lead to students feeling offended. As an educator early in my career, I was very excited to purchase my first clothing with Aboriginal art on it. I quickly found out, however, that there were people with no heritage to First Nations people, but were taking advantage of the system and making money from it. Because of this, I took my time to find a piece of clothing that I could afford, which had art which was made by an Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander and ensured profits went to communities or back to the artist. With this in mind, I looked for quite a while before I found this shirt, which I liked because it had a turtle on it. But it was made by Walbunja woman Bronwyn Smith for her business, Guyala Aboriginal Art. Establishing high expectations relationships can be complicated and difficult, as I am very aware of the existence of personal assumptions and their impacts on the ability of people to build and maintain relationships. As an educator, some First Australians families may feel discouraged from approaching me as a white person, as the assumptions from generational trauma could mean that the grown-ups assume I hold similar racist views that schools held while I was growing up. Parents that I interact with at first will most likely be around my age and have grown up with similar experiences of racism that the young Aboriginal people I knew as a student did. I will need to ensure that my actions appear non-threatening and allow the open space for dialogue and challenging conversations so I can begin to establish the trusting relationship required to support the jarjums in my classroom. Knowing when to speak and when to ask for help can be difficult to learn, as I experienced this year when I was working with a First Nations student in art class and I discussed their beautiful artwork. We then had a discussion which I believed had been uplifting and empowering, and I hoped left them proud of their heritage. Unfortunately, I had misheard them, which was followed by a miscommunication, which left them feeling deflated and upset by my words. What I thought I had heard and clarified on, and what the student had said, were two very different things, and in the end, required help from the student liaison officer to ensure I was able to have the right restorative conversation, repair the relationship, and apologise for upsetting them. The miscommunication nearly did some severe damage to their identity, and I was lucky to have the opportunity to repair the relationship as quickly as I did. This did, however, remind me of the importance of using the right tools and the right people to avoid a deficit discourse, where the student feels they are not able to speak up or be heard. To remind me of how often I need to let the other person talk, I wear this pin, which I purchased just before my prac in 2022. The different coloured skin tones remind me to listen closely to what someone is saying and ensure I do not speak over them or for them. I wear this pin with the paler skin tone on the bottom to remind myself it is not the white person's turn to speak, but to listen. I also wear this pin every day I work with students in the hopes all of them understand I am a safe person to talk to and will advocate for them when they need me to, and thrive to be aware of the existence of this imbalance of power and aim to change it. My 3 artefacts represent who I am in the space of education with all students, including First Australians, show how I want to remain informed and passionate about learning and what is best for my students. I will respect and value First Nations knowledge and use it in my classroom appropriately, so my students finish the year with respect and appreciation for what they can learn from the places around, look after it just as the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have for thousands and thousands of years.